Hello, my name is Liz, and this is an overview of my third project working in Photoshop. In general, my creative idea for the project was I wanted to take a city and put it inside of the woods or put it surrounded in nature because those two things seem really disconnected, and I thought it would be cool to see what it looked like when those two were morphed together. I got my inspiration from looking at other pictures online from Google that were really layered on top of each other and used a lot of transparency and overlap to make it seem like everything was more connected and not just sitting on top of each other. So I started out with my background of the sky right here, and then from the sky I added on the trees, and as you can see right here I added a mask down here to it, and then I used the brush tool, and I didn't delete, I think I hid the pixels so that you would see the background from the other image, and then instead of the background that are in the trees. So it was a little different than going into having a separate image and actually cutting out the background. I just removed it for a little bit so that the old background could come through. Then after I finished that was a little meticulous because I have to because you have to get into all of the details and the branches and all of the different leaves, and trying to get in between all of those. Sometimes I had to go to a size that was just 1 pixel. My brush size was just a 1 to make that happen. And then after I did that, I did the same thing with this mountain. First, I put it in another image. I cropped it, then brought it over to here. I did the same thing. I added a mask, and I used the brush tool to take some of the background out of this mountain so that it flowed more easily into the trees and into the sky. That was a little difficult. I had to kind of alternate between the trees and the mountain to make sure that I was erasing the right things and making sure that the right things were showing through. Finally, I moved to this picture, and as you can see, I cropped around. At first I had all of this cropped, but then I realized that was too big, so I covered that up, and then I cropped all around Big Ben. And this was also a little meticulous because some of these peaks right here are really hard to get in. Once I did that, I unclicked that, I copy and pasted, I copied and then I pasted it back into here, and I put it in the background. And then I had to play around with it a little bit to make sure that you could still see the Big Ben behind the trees. I wanted to make sure that it didn't look like this building was coming out of the mountain, that it was almost behind the mountain. And so I had to mess around with the layering a little bit. My next step was the eye, the London Eye, and similar to Big Ben, I used the background erasing tool. And this again was a little tricky. I had to get in through all of the carts. And then I again copied and pasted it over to here. And then once it was in here, I had to use the masking tool, just like I did in the forest photo and the mountain photo, so that you could see the forest in the background, so that it blended a little bit better. Once I added the photo booth, I had to blend that in too. I started to do the lines inside of the Ferris wheel, as you can see in here, and it just got way too difficult. I was working with a 1-point brush, and it wasn't really coming out very well, and so it just looked better to just totally get rid of those lines in the middle. And I think you still see that it's Big Ben. You can still see the carts around it. You can see that it's a Ferris wheel. So finally, I used this image that I actually took in London, and I cropped around it, copy and pasted it in, and then threw it in the background a little bit. And again, I had to use different layering to make sure it fit in the right place. I had to make sure that I had to keep alternating between the eye and the forest to make sure that the right image was coming through. So finally, once I had everything in the right position, I went through and I played around with the blending, and I don't think I used any of them on any of them, but I did play around with it. And then I went to the opacity. So for the forest, I think I used it for Big Ben. So I just played around with opacity a little bit to make everything seem more, I guess, a little eerie, to kind of, if I gave everything a similar opacity, everything would flow together a little bit better. And then I also, for a couple of the images, I went to image adjustments, and then I either did hue and saturation, or I did the brightness and contrast to try and even things out a little bit, try and make the image seem like one cohesive image instead of a bunch of images put together. Once I was done playing around with those, then I finally added the text on the bottom. I didn't want the text to distract from the rest of the picture because there's a lot of detail in the image, and there isn't a ton of space to add text without covering something up, so I thought the bottom corner was the best place for it. I almost just used it as like a title for the image. So overall, I really liked playing around with this mask over here because I thought it was really fun to see which image would pop through and which would look the best. I liked moving the things around, and then when I finally brought an image to the place where I really liked it, it was a really good feeling. At first I had the photo booth down in this corner and it was really small, and then actually when I was having some problems copying pasting the photo booth, it just went there right away, and I realized, wow, it looks a lot better when it's bigger and in the corner like that instead of small and in this little corner. And so I really learned a lot about this project. I learned a lot on Adobe's website, watching the tutorials, and I think I've really leaving this project with a lot of new information. Thank you.